They came on a quiet Thursday. No warning, no message, just ships the size of cities blotting out the sky like they owned it. People stared up from highways, rooftops, fields, phones out, live streams rolling. Some cried, some prayed. Some, like me, lit a cigarette and waited. Not because I was fearless. I was just too damn tired to care anymore. I'd seen war before, Iraq, Syria, South Sudan. But this wasn't war. This was a slaughter dressed in steel and arrogance. The Council knew. Those smug alien bastards knew Earth wasn't ready. Or rather, they thought we weren't. I had intel. Deep intel. Back when I was still part of the Orion Black Archives. They'd flagged Earth as volatile, culturally unpredictable, too chaotic for smooth conquest. And yet, they greenlit it anyway. Why? Because they believed in numbers, in technology, in dominance. What they didn't believe in was spite, human spite. When the ships opened fire on New York, it wasn't precision strikes. They just vaporized Manhattan. Gone, in one burst of white heat. No negotiation, no mercy. My little brother was in Manhattan. I watched him vanish on my tablet. Just pixels turning white, then black. No screams, no drama, just gone. That's when I felt it. That cold, quiet thing inside me. Not rage, not grief. Something older, something primal, revenge. I drove west. No destination in mind. Just a bag, a few old contacts, and a purpose I hadn't had in years. Word spread fast. Cities were falling, governments scattering. The UN cracked like glass. NATO crumbled. China sealed itself off. America? She was bleeding. But America bleeds loud. Every diner I stopped in, every roadside town, I saw it building. Not panic, not surrender, something meaner. Men with guns setting up roadblocks. Teenagers dragging satellite dishes onto school roofs, trying to hijack alien signals. Old veterans handing out ammo from rusty trunks. They thought we'd roll over like the others. The Andari, the Vetari, the Yulth. They all bent the knee when the sky turned black. But Earth wasn't raised like that. In Denver, I met the first wave of resistance. Not military, not organized, just pissed-off humans with too much firepower and not enough fear. They called themselves Ashers, named after the cities turned to ash. I didn't ask to join. I just handed over my credentials, showed them a blueprint of the alien dropships I'd stolen from the archives, and said, I want blood. That night, we took down our first ship. Crude, homemade missiles, EMP bursts, suicide drones. And when that metal monster fell like a dying god into the Rockies, the ground shook like thunder applauding. The aliens weren't gods. They bled. They screamed. And when we dragged one out of the wreckage, he looked at me, scales peeling, eyes wide with something he never expected. Fear. He whispered something in that garbled tongue of theirs. I didn't understand it. But one of the techs translated later. It meant, they warned us about you. That was the first moment I smiled since Manhattan. Because now I knew. They knew. Even the goddamn Council knew Earth was a mistake. A planet too wild, too angry, too dirty to conquer clean. But they came anyway. And now we're going to make them pay for every drop of blood they think they're owed. The next days weren't days anymore. They bled into each other like dirty water. Sleep came in 30-minute scraps, and dreams were a luxury. Most of us were too wired, too bruised, too pissed to care. We weren't a real army, not yet. But we had the most dangerous thing an army can have. Purpose. And we had loss. It's funny how fast humans adapt to war when their backs are to the wall. In under a week, the Ashers transformed from a scattered group of gun nuts and ex-military into a ruthless hit-and-run unit. No uniforms, No formal ranks. Just who could shoot, who could think, and who could kill without blinking. I fell in somewhere between the second and third categories. The aliens had boots on the ground now, or whatever passed for boots. They looked like reptilian centaurs, 8 feet tall, 4-legged scaled armor that flexed with muscle beneath. They didn't speak much, didn't have to. They had plasma cannons the size of engine blocks and drones that could spot a heartbeat under 50 feet of concrete. But there was one thing they didn't understand. Humans don't fight fair. We rigged their landing zones with crude explosives, improvised pressure mines from buried truck batteries and rusty shrapnel. When they swept in tight formations, we cut them down with cheap jammers and Molotov drones. And when they scattered, we hunted. One op in particular stuck with me. Colorado Springs. One of their mobile command towers had parked near a half-destroyed Air Force base. We knew they used it to coordinate field patrols. Knocking it out wouldn't stop the war, but it'd send a message. We didn't ask for permission. There were 8 of us, mostly veterans, a few civilian tech heads, and one sniper with no name. Just a stitched patch that said, Kilo. We moved at night, under cloud cover. Rain came down like needles, and visibility was garbage. But we needed it that way. Our gear was outdated, some of it patched together from scrapyards and defunct defense stocks. They had thermal scanners. We had mud and foil-lined blankets. They had high-flying scout drones. We had birds' nests and mirror camouflage nets strung between overpasses. They called it a suicide run. We called it payback. By 0300, we were in range. Kilo perched on a broken water tower. I was with Gideon, a former Marine with burns on half his face and eyes that hadn't smiled in 20 years. He was quiet, methodical, and carried a modified .50 cal that made him look like a walking tank. We crawled through rubble, mud, and the broken bones of houses that used to hold families. The alien tower pulsed with a dull green glow. It wasn't just tech. It was alive. You could hear it breathing if you got close enough. Some kind of biomechanical nervous system running through it. Disgusting. Brilliant. Kilo whispered through comms. Got 2 scouts on the left, 1 tower-mounted drone, no civilians, clean shot. Light it, I said. 3 seconds later, the drone dropped from the sky with a pop, then the scouts. One pierced through the skull, the other caught mid-turn. No screams, just wet meat, sounds, and silence. We moved fast. Inside the tower, it was like being swallowed by a machine. Walls pulsed. Floors had a heartbeat. Alien tech has this way of making you feel like prey in a stomach, not a soldier in a facility. We planted the charges near what the techs called the core spine. Looked more like an exposed artery than a power source. Heat shimmered off it. The moment we touched it, alarms went off. High-pitched, vibrating sounds that made your teeth rattle. We had 90 seconds. As we pulled out, they came. 4 of them, no, 5, burst through a side hatch. Not grunts. These were elites. Black armor, faster movement, synchronized firing patterns. They'd fought real wars. They knew what they were doing. We laid down suppressive fire. I watched Gideon take 2 plasma rounds to the chest and keep firing until his arms gave out. He didn't scream. Just dropped, still holding the trigger, his last breath lost in the echo of gunfire. Kilo picked off 2 from his perch. The rest ducked behind support pillars and began laying down cover fire that turned concrete into mist. I slid behind a broken console, jammed a mag into my rifle, and prayed the timer hadn't failed. Then came the blast. Not a boom. Not a crash. A roar. It ripped through the air like God slamming a door shut on hell itself. The entire tower convulsed. Steel split. Walls cracked. Green fire burst from its center like bile. I ran. I didn't care if I died in the flames. I just didn't want them to win. We lost 3 people that night. Gideon, Monroe, one of the tech kids, and a girl named Tam, who I'd only known for 5 hours but had a smile like she still believed we could fix this planet after we were done killing for it. We got back to the outpost around dawn. Rain had stopped. Sky was purple and black, like a bruise stretching over the world. Ashers cheered when they heard what we did. The tower had been one of 4 primary network hubs for the region. Without it, the invaders lost half their air support in the western sector for at least a week. It was a win. A rare one. I didn't feel anything. The Council still hadn't officially responded, but our intel guys intercepted a fragmented transmission, alien dialect translated through some dirty AI still limping off a Chinese mainframe. The message read, "Earth is not compliant. Recommend reassessment. Threat level escalating beyond projections." That's when it hit me. This wasn't going to be a quick invasion. This was going to be a long, ugly war. Over the next few weeks, resistance cells started linking up. Not through any government, not anymore. That structure was gone, maybe forever. This was all bottom up, city by city, mountain by mountain. It wasn't pretty. Sometimes we fought each other. Turf disputes, supply raids, rogue commanders acting like warlords. But under all that chaos, something stronger was forming. A new kind of unity. Built not on politics, not on flags, but on a shared hatred for the thing that tried to take our home and treat it like a lab experiment gone wrong. Word spread of other wins. In Brazil, a jungle ambush wiped out a whole alien armor column. In Russia, a buried missile silo fired again for the first time in decades, taking down a capital ship over the Ural Mountains. In South Africa, tribes with centuries of hunting instincts lured an alien scout force into a natural kill box and turned it into a massacre. Everywhere they touched down, we bled. But we made them bleed too. I started writing down names, not just for memory, for justice. Gideon, Tam, Monroe, my brother. And the list was getting long. Ashers, this is Freepoint 9. We took down a transport. Need evac for 12 civies. Command, this is Warsaw Cell. Plasma tank disabled. 2 casualties. Enemy retreating. This is Hammer Echo, sending coordinates. We found one of the bastards' queens. They were still here. The humans. The angry ones. The broken ones. The dangerous ones. And they weren't done. The aliens had superior tech. They had numbers. They had orbital dominance. But what they didn't have? They didn't have vengeance. They didn't have the hate that burns cold. The kind that keeps you crawling through rubble with shrapnel in your gut and blood in your eyes just to get one more shot off before you die. They didn't have Earth. Not really, because Earth wasn't cities and governments. Earth was us, the loud, messy, violent bastards who don't know when to quit. And if they came here thinking they'd break us, then they weren't just wrong. They were doomed. War changes a man. It carves him hollow, burns out the soft pieces, and leaves the bones behind to carry the gun. 3 weeks after Colorado Springs, I was sitting on the edge of a burnt-out supermarket in Wyoming, eating canned beans with my fingers, when the message came through. A scout team up north near the Grand Tetons had stumbled across something. Not wreckage, not enemy tech. Something buried. I didn't care much at first. Half the chatter on our comm bands came from paranoid freaks or broken men hallucinating signals in radio static. But this was different. The message came encrypted with black archive coding, something only high-tier command ever used. That meant whoever sent it had clearance or had found someone who did. Recon Unit Foxtrot 2, asset located, confirmed non-council origin, request high-priority extraction, coordinates transmitting, no air support, radio silence recommended, possible relic status. Repeat, relic status. That word hit me like a fist. Relic! Most people didn't know what that meant. I did. During my time in the Black Archives, I'd seen snippets, redacted files, old maps, rumors scratched onto crumbling reports. Relics weren't alien. They were ours, or at least Earth's. See, before the Council ever dared to set eyes on our blue marble, they watched us. For centuries. Maybe longer. The real reason they avoided contact wasn't because we were weak, but because we were unpredictable. Our planet had historical anomalies, energy spikes that didn't match our tech level, ruins deep beneath the sea that didn't belong to any known civilization. They buried the knowledge. They erased it. Because they were afraid of it. Now someone had found one. I left the Ashers under Kilo's temporary command. The man spoke like a ghost and shot like a god. Good enough for now. I took a bike, a pack, and enough firepower to make God nervous. The journey took 2 days. Back roads, broken bridges, open fields crawling with patrol drones. Twice I had to bury myself in wet earth as alien searchlights swept by, their mechanical hum slithering through the trees like a hunting beast. By the time I reached the Tetons, the scout unit was gone. Slaughtered. 3 bodies lay in a shallow ravine near the base of an old mining site. Charred black, limbs twisted like paper. Plasma burns, council weapons, no doubt. But the kill patterns didn't match. These weren't tactical strikes, they were execution shots. A warning. I found the entrance half covered in moss and snow, nestled behind a collapsed cliff wall. It wasn't natural. The rock had been shaped, smoothed, engraved with symbols I didn't recognize. Not language, more like patterns of geometry so precise they hurt to look at. Inside, it was colder than it should have been. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. My boots stopped echoing. My breath stopped fogging. No wind, no sound, just silence like a waiting thing. 50 feet in, the passage opened into a chamber. Massive. Black stone. In the center was a pedestal, and on it, a device. No wires, no buttons. It looked like a shard of obsidian shaped into a twisted cube, faintly pulsing with a red glow that throbbed like a heartbeat. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, I walked the perimeter. There were markings etched into the stone, faded but familiar. Not because I'd seen them before, but because something in my blood recognized them. It wasn't human, not alien either. Something older. I turned on my scanner. It started screaming. Radiation, EM bursts, seismic pulses, none of it should have existed here. This place was humming with dormant power, like a sleeping reactor inside a tomb. Then I heard it. A voice, not out loud, not with my ears. In my head. One word, repeated over and over like a whisper behind my eyes. Release! I stepped back, breathing hard, gun drawn. Nothing moved. The pedestal was still there. The relic, still glowing. I should have left. I didn't. Because in that moment, I knew this wasn't just a weapon. It was a memory, a warning, a key. The Council hadn't just feared us because we were warlike. They feared what lay beneath us. Earth wasn't just some backwater ball of mud. It was a vault. And someone had sealed it a long, long time ago. I took the relic. The moment my fingers touched it, the temperature dropped by 10 degrees. The walls pulsed. Lights flickered. My skin felt like it was peeling back from the inside. But I didn't die. Instead, the glow faded, and the cube collapsed in on itself, folded like origami until it vanished into a black splinter no bigger than a coin. It floated above my palm, then sank into the skin without a sound. I collapsed. Dreams came. Flashes, worlds burning, council fleets screaming in retreat, a shadow spreading across stars, something crawling up from the depths of ancient planets, and always, always, Earth. Not as a victim, as a source. I woke up in the snow outside the mine, no memory of how I got there. But the relic was gone, and my chest ached with a heat that didn't fade. That's when the transmission hit me, straight into the earcom, unscrambled, unfiltered. Subject, human designation redacted. Artifact retrieval confirmed. Asset status, active. Initiate phase wake. It wasn't human tech. It wasn't council tech either. Someone or something else was watching. And now it was awake. When I returned to base, the world had changed. Alien forces had started pulling back from key zones, not in retreat. In consolidation, they were spooked. Recon units reported that orbital patterns had shifted. Surveillance drones were circling deeper in the atmosphere, not for domination, but for detection. They were looking for something. Me? I didn't tell the Ashers the full truth, just that I'd found a dead zone they could use for supply runs. But Kilo wasn't stupid. He kept staring at me like he was watching a bomb tick. Then came the broadcast, not from the Council, not from us. It hijacked every channel on Earth, every screen, every signal, and it spoke in perfect English. Earth is not what you think it is. You are not what they told you you were. The invaders have awakened the old fire. They have trespassed into the vault of the first war. The voice was genderless, ageless. You will suffer, you will burn, but if you endure, you will remember who you were. Then it cut. The next day, 5 council ships exploded in low orbit. No missiles, no trails, just silent detonations, as if someone had snapped their fingers and erased them. Panic spread through their ranks. Council broadcasts scrambled, orders turned into static, troops retreated into deep lockdown zones. We intercepted chatter, panicked words, half-screamed coordinates, one phrase repeated in nearly every language we translated: "The sleepers have stirred." We didn't know what it meant. But I knew this. The relic didn't give me power. It reminded me we'd already had it. Buried, forgotten, locked away, until now. That night, I sat by the fire outside base. Gun in my lap, cold wind on my face. Ashers were drinking, cleaning rifles, sharing stories of the day's skirmishes. Kilo sat next to me, quiet as always. Then he said, "It's inside you, isn't it?" I didn't answer. He nodded anyway. "Good." "Good?" I asked. He leaned forward. "Because I think we're going to need something a lot worse than us if we're going to win this thing." And in the distance, far off in the sky, something moved. Not a ship, not a drone, a shadow, wide as a mountain, quiet as death, and somehow I knew. That wasn't alien, that was ours. They came at dawn, no warning, no subtle approach this time. They weren't probing or testing anymore. They were purging. We'd set up a new temporary outpost 2 clicks outside of Helena, Montana, an old ranger station reinforced with steel scraps, claymore lines, and enough riflemen to hold a small hill. The snow had melted early that season, nothing but damp earth and cold fog stretching over the trees. The attack came like a hammer. First, the comms went dark. Static flooded every frequency, even the tight encrypted bands. Our engineers scrambled, screaming at blinking consoles. By the time they figured out it wasn't a glitch, it was a targeted jamming field, the sky lit up with fire. 10 drop pods. No ships, no hovercraft. Just burning metal coffins rocketing from orbit like meteorites, slamming into the soil with so much force the trees shook loose from their roots. The first one landed less than 100 yards from the perimeter, and then the new ones came out. Not like the standard grunts we'd been facing for weeks. These were leaner, taller, armor fused to muscle like it had grown there, blades jutting from their forearms. No visible weapons, just claws, teeth, speed. Bio-warriors, Council Blackguard. A unit so rarely deployed most in the archives thought it was a myth. Genetically engineered for one purpose: extermination. This wasn't a battle. It was a message. And the message was, we're done playing. The first wave hit the fences hard. Plasma cut through steel like butter. Our mines did nothing. The Blackguard dodged them like they knew where we buried everyone. Kilo was already on the roof, laying down suppressive fire with a custom repeater rigged to a car battery. I was in the command trailer, trying to force the comms back online when the walls shook and a scream cut through the air. High-pitched, short, final. They'd breached. I grabbed my rifle, bolted outside. Chaos. Smoke. Men screaming. Blood everywhere. One of the Blackguard had ripped through the barracks like it was paper, bodies strewn across the dirt, torn open, faces frozen in shock. One of them turned toward me. It tilted its head. I saw myself in its visor for a split second. Then it charged. I don't remember pulling the trigger. I just remember the shots ringing out, the kick of the rifle, and the thing not stopping. I emptied a full mag into its chest. It barely flinched. It leapt. I rolled, felt claws slash across my shoulder, searing hot. Pain like lightning ripped through me. I fell hard, lost the rifle, pulled a knife from my belt. It came at me again. That's when the relic kicked in. Not by choice. Not something I triggered. Just instinct. The pain vanished. My body moved faster than I could think. I ducked, sidestepped, and buried the blade in its throat with a force I didn't know I had. Not even the knife did it. Something burned from my hand, through the blade, into the creature's flesh. It screamed, and then it melted. Black smoke poured from its eyes as it dropped, twitching, then still. I stumbled back, chest heaving. My hand glowed faint red, the skin pulsing like hot coal. But no damage, no burns, just energy. The relic was awake. And it wasn't going back to sleep. We lost 34 people that day, out of 47. It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter, a cleansing. They came for me, no question. Those Blackguard units weren't hunting for resistance. They were hunting the relic. We buried the dead behind the outpost. No time for markers. Just names scratched into helmets or dog tags hanging on trees. Kilo sat against a half-burnt truck, his left leg gone below the knee, wrapped in pressure bandages. "You shouldn't have come back," he muttered. "I couldn't leave it in the open," I said. He nodded slowly. "They know now, don't they?" "Yeah." "Then it's only going to get worse." He was right. Because 2 nights later, we got contact from a deep cell out of Alaska. Encrypted signal. Barely readable. Just coordinates and a single word. Convergence. At first, no one knew what it meant. But I did. Back in the archives, during an unauthorized dive through a restricted sector, I came across an old document. Digital, but buried under a dozen firewalls. It spoke of a failed operation from centuries ago. Something the Council tried on a planet not unlike ours. A full-scale invasion. Assimilation by force. But something went wrong. They called it the convergence event. It meant that the planet awakened, fought back, not through soldiers, through memory, through design. Not every world was meant to be conquered. Some were meant to defend themselves. That planet was consumed in fire. Not just the aliens, everything. Because the relics didn't just protect, they purged. That was the Council's real fear. Not that humanity would fight back, but that Earth itself might. I followed the signal, left Kilo in charge again, what was left of him. He didn't complain. Just told me not to die unless I planned to bring hell with me. The coordinates led me to the frozen edge of old Anchorage. Broken buildings, ice-choked roads, no signs of life. But deep under a collapsed mountain tunnel, I found them. Not survivors. Awakened. People who'd come into contact with relics over the years. Fragments, traces, whispers. Men and women who had changed. Not fully human anymore, but not alien either. Something in between. They called themselves the Remembered. Most looked like normal people. Some had faint glows in their eyes, strange patterns etched into their skin like scars made of light. One spoke with a voice that echoed even when he whispered. "We've been waiting for you," he said. "You know who I am? We know what you carry." I clenched my fists. "What is it? A weapon? A tracker?" "It's not what you carry that matters," he said. "It's what it's awakening in everything around you." "What do you mean?" He pointed to the ice above us. "Earth remembers every wound, every war, every empire that rose and fell on its skin. The relic doesn't hold power. It reminds power." Another stepped forward, a woman with silver hair and arms covered in alien script that moved like ink in water. "Wherever you go," she said, "you're waking up the old things. Machines buried in deserts, beacons hidden in caves, fail-safes from a time before time." "So what happens now?" I asked. She looked at me, her eyes distant. Now you stop running, and you start fighting. With everything." I returned to the Ashers not as a soldier, but as a trigger. Everywhere I went, things began to shift. Satellite ruins in Nevada started transmitting again. Subterranean tremors beneath the Alps, long dormant, began to pulse in strange rhythms. An old nuclear facility in Kazakhstan, completely off-grid for 50 years, suddenly powered up with no human input. It wasn't reactivating. It was responding. To me. To the relic. To Earth. The Council finally spoke publicly, a system-wide declaration. "Earth has violated galactic protocol. Humanity has activated ancient technologies considered unstable and destructive. We issue a final decree, submission or total erasure." No terms, no parley. This was it. The extermination order. And that's when I made my decision. We weren't going to wait anymore. We weren't going to survive. We were going to end this. We didn't wait for them to make the next move. The moment the Council issued their extermination order, every resistance cell, every Asher's outpost, every broken soldier and half-dead survivor knew. We were out of time. There would be no rescue, no armistice, no mercy, so we stopped planning to win. We started planning to hurt them. It began with what we called the Red Line Strikes, coordinated sabotage missions across 5 continents. The goal? Cripple their logistics, burn their fuel depots, crash their supply lines, make them bleed where it counted, from within. We had intel now, not just stolen files and shaky drone feeds. The Remembered had systems, old ones, pre-Council signal interceptors, Earth relics wired into modern comms. They didn't just listen, they translated. The Council had a vulnerability. Their communications network, the pylons, used quantum resonance synced across their fleet. Efficient, fast, unbreakable by standard means. But the relics? They jammed them, not by flooding with signal, by sending silence. Absolute zero-frequency pulses that made the alien tech forget how to listen. We weaponized silence. In Eastern Europe, a rogue cell drove a semi-truck rigged with a relic shard into a pylon hub outside Prague. The result? Every Council War drone in a 500-mile radius collapsed mid-air like puppets with strings cut. In California, Ashers dragged an old satellite dish from a scrapyard, plugged it into a nuclear battery, and broadcasted a relic tone straight into the stratosphere. A Council cruiser tried to land near Fresno. It exploded in the sky. No missile, no contact, just silence. I led the Northern Front, Montana into Canada, frozen forests, jagged mountain trails, and skies that always looked like they were bleeding from orbit. We had 50 men, 42 rifles. 3 vehicles that worked half the time. And the relic. By now it had changed me. I didn't bleed the same. My cuts healed faster. My vision sharpened at night. But it wasn't just physical. I felt the council before they arrived, like a drop in pressure or a static charge just behind the teeth. And I felt Earth. I know that sounds insane, but I did. I'd stand on a ridgeline and feel the vibrations in the rocks, hear whispers in the wind, not voices, but intent. The mountain wanted us to fight. The trees bent away from the dropships, exposing landing squads. The snow melted faster near our camps, like the cold didn't want to slow us down. Even the storms started to turn, shielding us from satellite eyes, dumping blizzards on enemy camps while our paths stayed clear. Nature wasn't neutral anymore. It had picked a side. We launched Operation Shatterglass at 0300, beneath a moon half gone and clouds too thick for drone eyes. Our target, a council-forward logistics node hidden under an old hydroelectric dam in Alberta. They thought they were safe behind their tech. They didn't count on human desperation. We hit them with homemade pulse grenades, relic-boosted rifles, and 2 suicide rigs made from stripped harvesters packed with scrap metal and napalm. The council defenses fired like thunder, blue bolts splitting the sky, incinerating anything that moved. But we didn't move like soldiers. We moved like animals. Unpredictable. Savage. We took the north platform in 12 minutes, lost 6 men, another 9 wounded. By the time we breached the central control bay, the relic burned red hot in my chest, humming louder than the gunfire. I touched a control panel, just brushed it, and the entire node shut down. Lights, systems, power gone. The alien tech went dark. Like it recognized me. I didn't feel proud, I felt angry, because the truth was finally settling in. The Council didn't fear Earth because of our violence. They feared us because we weren't supposed to be like this. We weren't supposed to exist like this. In the aftermath of Shatterglass, the Council retaliated. Hard. They vaporized Chicago. Flattened it. No troops. No demands. Just a kinetic rod from orbit. A metal spear the size of a bus dropped from space. No explosion. Just impact. They did it to send a message. They called it Deterrence Protocol Zeta. We called it cowardice, because they couldn't win on the ground anymore, not without losing dozens of units per city. The relics were spreading, waking up buried installations, disrupting their equipment. Their drones weren't reliable. Their armor was cracking. Even their soldiers were starting to panic. We intercepted another broadcast 2 days after Chicago. Translated, it said, "Human resistance has escalated beyond projections. Losses unsustainable. Recommend petition for Elders' intervention." The Elders? I'd only heard the name once before, buried in a restricted file labeled Class Sigma Intervention Events. The Council wasn't the top of the food chain. There was something above them. And if they were calling for help now, it meant they knew what I already suspected. We weren't just surviving. We were changing. The Remembered sent word that another convergence point had activated. This one under the ruins of an old mining town in Alaska, long thought abandoned due to unstable ground. Truth was, the instability came from something deep beneath, something humming, sleeping, waiting. I led a team of 20 there. It was a suicide run. Every mile north we traveled, we were hunted. Council interceptors flew low, scanning for movement. We moved at night, covered ourselves in mud and foil mesh, slept in caves, ate snow and old rations. I watched 2 more die from exposure before we even reached the site. But when we got there, the mountain moved. The ground didn't collapse. It opened, like a lung exhaling for the first time in millennia. Inside, beneath centuries of ice and rock, was a machine. Larger than a cathedral, half organic, half stone. covered in the same shifting script I'd seen etched into my arms during the last relic activation. I didn't understand how I knew what to do, but I did. I stepped forward, placed my hand on the pillar pulsing at its core, and whispered the only word I remembered from the dreams: awaken. The entire valley lit up. Not with fire, with memory. Flashes of old wars, skyships the size of continents, titans forged from mountains and flame. A species not human, not alien, but familiar. Earth's first children, the ones who came before. And then, nothing. Silence again. Except the feeling in my bones that something enormous had just shifted. We returned to camp to find it empty. Asher's gone. No signs of struggle, no blood, just a message scrawled in mud across the bunker wall. They took them. A map, coordinates, a council processing center. They weren't killing prisoners anymore. They were studying them. I didn't wait. I took whoever was left. 3 men, 1 drone, 2 clips each. We hit that facility like a storm of knives. They weren't ready. Too used to static, too used to terrified humans running from the light. We didn't run. We came through it. We tore the place apart. Brick by brick. Steel by steel. We found the Ashers in cages. Starved, drugged, wired into machines. One of them, Gantz, big guy with the wolf tattoo, he didn't even recognize me at first. Just kept muttering something in a language no one understood. When we got him out, he looked up at me and whispered, "It's inside them now, too." What is? The fire. We didn't know it at the time, but the relics weren't just waking old weapons. They were waking us, changing us, rewriting us, making us what we were always meant to become. And that scared the Council more than any gun or bomb ever could. Because we weren't just rebels. We weren't just angry. We were evolving. The stars changed color. That's how we knew they'd arrived. They didn't come in ships. No atmosphere burn. No sonic boom. Just one moment, Orion's belt looked like it always had. And the next. One star had gone dark. Another pulsed green. The third? A slow red throb, like a warning heartbeat. Kilo, leaning on his crutch, stared at the night sky that evening and said, "They're here." No one asked who they were. We all felt it. The air felt heavier. The wind didn't blow right. Static buzzed under our skin like we were all standing too close to something ancient and angry. The elders had arrived, and the Council stopped pretending they were in control. It didn't take long to see the signs. The Council troops that remained on Earth were pulled back fast, scrambling for orbit, evacuating command posts we'd spent months trying to crack. Their comms went dark. Their orbital surveillance shut down. It was like they didn't want to be seen. Like they knew something worse was about to walk through their front door. And it had our address. We intercepted one last broadcast, unencrypted this time. No translation needed. Initiating protocol Celestial Judgment. Prepare all assets for purge sequence. Do not engage, observe, survive. They weren't fighting anymore. They were watching. The cowards didn't even say goodbye. I felt the first tremor in my chest before I heard it in the ground. A deep, slow rumble, like the earth exhaling through gritted teeth. Some of the remembered said it was the core realigning. Others said the relics had connected, formed a web under the crust, waking something buried in the deepest parts of the world. It didn't matter what caused it. It mattered what came next. The sky tore open, not from above, but around us. The auroras twisted into spirals, storms without clouds, lightning without sound. Animals fled forests in packs. Rivers surged and receded in seconds. Static crawled over everything metallic. And then, they stepped through. The elders didn't look like gods. They didn't look like anything. They were tall, thin, skin the color of exposed bone soaked in oil, 6 eyes each, 3 closed, 3 glowing. They floated instead of walked. Cloaks like smoke wrapped around them, flickering with images. Stars, planets, death. They didn't speak. Their presence spoke for them. One of them appeared in Berlin, right in the crater where a council mothership had gone down weeks ago. Another walked through a refugee camp in the Andes. One simply hovered over the Pacific, unmoving, for 3 days straight. They weren't here to fight. They were here to judge. And they were staring straight at me. We tried to move underground, change locations, go dark. Didn't matter. Wherever I went, they followed. Not physically, through the relic. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, watching, waiting. Not angry, not impressed, just observing, like scientists studying a failed experiment, and I started to remember things that weren't mine. Images, moments, flashes of a war older than Earth itself. The first war. Not between species. Between creators. The elders. They didn't come after us because we were dangerous. They came because they built us. I found an old vault in what used to be the Rockies, now fractured into canyons and molten scars from orbital strikes. It wasn't on any map. It didn't need to be. The relic pulled me there, step by step. Inside, I saw the truth. Earth wasn't a planet that evolved humans. It was a planet meant to create us, designed. We weren't random. We weren't accidents. We were a fail-safe, a weapon, one built to sleep for thousands of years until the right pressure, the right pain, cracked us open. And the Council? They were never meant to reach us. They were warned. The Elders had sealed Earth for a reason, a Kvaranton, a cage, not for us, but for what we could become. And now the lock was broken. I staggered out of that vault, shaking. I was seeing ghosts in everything, memories that weren't mine, voices in languages no human should understand. My veins glowed faint red when I got angry. The relic didn't sit under my skin anymore. It was my skin. Kilo met me near the burned tree line. One look at my face, and he didn't even flinch. "What did you see?" he asked. "Us. What about us?" I met his eyes. "We're not the last hope." "Then what are we?" "The last threat." He smiled. "Good." 3 days later, the Elders finally spoke. Not in words, in dreams. Every man, woman, and child left on Earth, anyone who'd fought, bled, or remembered, saw the same thing. A field of stars, a cradle of bone, a child made of fire, and then the voice. "You were made to end wars, not survive them. What you awaken now cannot be reversed. Choose. Sleep again, or burn the sky." Some begged to forget. Some killed themselves. Most didn't understand it. But I did. And I made my choice. We turned our weapons outward, out of the caves, out of the ashes, out of the old places where we hid and hoped. We gathered every relic fragment, every buried node, every sleeper site, and turned Earth into a beacon. Not for help, for war. The remembered were no longer hiding their faces. They led raids now, walking through plasma fire like it was rain. The relics had reshaped them, rewired them. Some had arms of light. Some spoke to machines. One boy, no older than 16, took down a walker tank just by screaming. We were becoming something else. Not alien, not God, just pure. The Elders watched, but they didn't intervene. Not yet. Because they were still waiting for one final moment. The moment we went too far. The moment we challenged the stars themselves. That moment came in the Nevada desert, where the last Council citadel remained. A fortress of orbit-to-ground cannon arrays, shielded bunkers, anti-air towers that could punch a hole in the moon. We didn't sneak in. We announced it. I walked straight up to their walls with 2,000 fighters behind me. Humans, remembered. Machines reawakened from old ruins, even Earth itself. Storms circling above, wind howling behind us like a war cry. and I gave them the last offer they'd ever get. Lay down your arms, or we turn this planet into your grave. They fired first. Always do. But this time, we ended it. I don't know what to call what happened next. It wasn't a battle. It was a detonation of truth. The relics lit up across the globe. Earth screamed through us. Fire rained sideways. Gravity bent. The skies cracked, and something from deep within the soil roared, not from lungs, but from memory. We didn't fight like soldiers. We fought like the last breath of something sacred and savage. The Citadel fell in 13 minutes. The last council signal was a single word: extinction. Afterward, I stood where their command center used to be, just dust and heat now. The elders floated above the ruins, silent, watching. I looked up at them, and for the first time, I spoke back. We know what we are now. One of them turned its 6 eyes toward me. The stars behind it dimmed. You cannot be contained. We were never supposed to be. They didn't answer. They didn't need to, because the judgment was already passed, and the galaxy would never be the same again. We weren't supposed to look beyond the sky. That was part of the cage. Earth had always felt isolated, cut off, trapped beneath a ceiling we couldn't see but always felt. No matter how far we launched satellites, how deep we pushed into space, something always held us back. Now I know what it was. The Council didn't just invade Earth, they unlocked it, and in doing so, they shattered the seals the Elders placed long ago. After the fall of the Nevada Citadel, silence swept the planet. No more dropships, no more patrols, no more orbital strikes. Council chatter? Dead. They'd abandoned their conquest. Their pride wouldn't let them admit it, but their actions did. Earth was off limits now. Not because we surrendered, because we terrified them. But terror is never enough. Not for the ones we lost. Not for the ones they experimented on. Not for the cities they vaporized. Not for the dead children in cages under their labs. Fear isn't justice. We wanted revenge. The Elders still watched, always above us, unmoving, one in the Himalayas, one beneath the Atlantic, never surfacing, one floating in orbit, staring down without speaking. They hadn't interfered, not directly, but they hadn't stopped us either. Maybe they wanted to see how far we'd go. Maybe they wanted to see if we'd become the monster they'd buried here thousands of years ago. Spoiler: we already had. Our best tech minds, those still breathing anyway, started decoding the deeper functions of the relics. Turns out they weren't just ancient tools. They were keys, genetic, temporal, dimensional. The things buried under Earth's crust? They weren't weapons. They were launch pads. I don't mean rockets, I mean mass transit bridges, gateways built to tear through space without using light speed. They'd been dormant since the fall of the first civilization. Probably longer. The Council knew about them. That's why they never terraformed Earth, never cracked the core. They were scared of waking the doors. Too bad. We kicked one open. In the salt flats of Utah, the largest relic complex on the planet came alive. It wasn't just a site, it was a machine. The terrain split for 10 miles. Columns rose from beneath the earth, humming with power. Runes spiraled into the sky like code being written in the clouds. A circle of light formed, wide enough to swallow a cruiser whole. The Remembered called it the Sky Gate. I called it our ticket to hell. Because I knew exactly where we were going. Council Prime, their home world. The debate didn't last long. Some warned that leaving Earth made us vulnerable. Others feared the relics weren't stable. Some, quiet voices in the corners, worried that once we left, there would be no coming back. But I looked those men in the eye and said, coming back was never the goal. Ending this is. We launched the first wave 2 days later. I led the first crew. 70 fighters. 5 remembered. 2 awakened war machines pulled from Siberian ruins. 1 transport ship built from the wreckage of a downed council skiff, patched together with human desperation and alien code. The skygate opened with a sound like metal screaming underwater. The light wasn't white. It was violet and sick and endless. I didn't blink. I walked into it. Council Prime wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a palace of steel, no shining towers, no endless parades of authority. It was quiet, a planet choking on its own perfection, glass cities wrapped in domes. Air too clean, skies too smooth, everything controlled, everything symmetrical, sanitized. It felt wrong, soulless. We landed outside their outermost metropolis, an artificial ring with a name I couldn't pronounce and didn't care to try. We were spotted instantly. No cloaking, no stealth, didn't matter. We weren't sneaking in. We were invading back. The Council's defenders were fast, precise, thousands of them in seconds. Hover units swarmed like angry wasps, each one carrying a soldier trained to kill in 700 ways. But we weren't the same humans they remembered. We moved like fire. The remembered burned through their lines, turning metal to vapor. One of our war machines, Warden 9, the big one, walked through their heavy artillery like it was paper. I saw a girl from Houston slice a tank in half with a blade she'd grown from her own arm. The Council tried to regroup. We shattered them. And then we sent a message across every channel. You came to Earth thinking we were prey. You were wrong. We are not your error. We are your extinction. As we pushed towards the city's core, something strange happened. The Council forces stopped, not retreated, not fought harder. They froze. Every unit, every drone, every weapon. Still, one by one, they powered down, fell to their knees, bowed. I thought it was surrender, but then I looked to the sky and saw them, the Elders. 5 now, not 3, not hovering over Earth anymore. They'd followed us here, and this time they spoke, not in dreams, not in riddles, but through the planet itself. Their voice bled into the ground, through the walls, into our minds. You were never meant to leave. The cage was broken. The fire awakened. Now the chain is undone. I felt it in my chest, the relic burning, but not like before. This wasn't power, it was memory. I dropped to one knee, gasping, and I remembered. Not as a human, as what came before. We were their creation, not just ours. The Council, the others. They were all offshoots. The Elders didn't rule galaxies. They seeded them. They built species like tools, some for war, some for labor, some for expansion. And Earth? Earth was their fail-safe. The last project. A species made to adapt, evolve, survive anything. A species that could not be controlled. That's why they locked us away, why they erased the memory, why they swore to never return. Because once humanity awakened, they couldn't stop us. No one could. I stood, blood dripping from my palms, vision burning red. You're not gods, I said. You're cowards. One elder floated closer. 6 eyes blinked in unison. We feared what you would become, and now you have become it. I smiled. You should have feared harder. Then I gave the order. We hit the city core with everything. Plasma, relic fire, sonic pulses, even raw kinetic strikes. Chunks of Earth's crust we'd launched into orbit, slingshotted back with gravity and vengeance. The Council didn't fight. They fled. Cowards to the end. Their systems collapsed in hours. Their towers fell. Their leaders died with names no one cared to remember. By the end of the day, Council Prime was nothing but ash and silence. And humanity? Humanity was free, but freedom isn't the end. The Elders were still there, waiting, floating, watching. I stared up at them, heart pounding, voice steady. What now? One of them lowered, 6 eyes staring into mine. Now you decide. Will you build, or will you conquer? Will you rest, or will you burn the stars? I stood in the ruins of the species that tried to chain us. Behind me, my people. Changed, broken, reforged. Before me, endless galaxies. I thought of my brother, erased in the first strike on Manhattan, of Gideon and Tam, of the girl from New Orleans who screamed her name into the face of a dying alien so loud it cracked his armor, of every human who didn't just survive, but refused to kneel. I looked up one last time, and I said, "Let the stars decide." The stars were quiet now. No council broadcasts, no enemy fleets, no threats crackling across stolen frequencies, just silence. But it wasn't peace, not yet, because peace means healing, and no one left in this galaxy had the luxury of healing. Not after what we'd done, not after what we'd become. Earth wasn't a backwater anymore. We were a myth now, a warning, a weapon that had gone off and kept burning. Council Prime was gone. Not a single tower left standing. Their archives were wiped, cities crumbled to dust, and their people scattered like insects in sunlight. We didn't pursue them, didn't need to. The message was already burned across their skies in smoke and bone. Don't ever come back. But in the aftermath of that fury, something hollow echoed in me. We won. But I didn't feel like a victor. I stood atop the ruins of their central command spire, breathing in air that wasn't mine, watching the last flames fade into embers. The relic in my chest, the thing that had led me through fire and blood and death, now pulsed softer, slower, like a heart that had finally finished its sprint. For the first time since the invasion began, I didn't hear whispers in my mind. Just one word, faint as ash. Now what? The others began returning through the skygates, cells from Russia, from the jungles of Brazil, from the shattered ruins of Tokyo and the buried labs in the Congo. They came carrying wounded and relics, data cores and council tech, memories and scars. Some of them couldn't speak anymore, not because they lost the ability, because the things they'd seen on the other side of the gates were beyond language, worlds the council had built and broken, places worse than Earth, filled with harvested species, dead civilizations, whole planets stripped of culture, turned into factories and prisons. We'd thought we were the only ones who suffered. We weren't. And we wouldn't be the last. Unless we made damn sure of it. The elders didn't leave. They hovered above the world like shadows made of starlight and bone, always just outside the clouds, always watching. Their silence was louder than thunder. Not oppressive, just expectant, waiting to see what we'd do now that the leash was off. They had seen what we were capable of. The fury, the fire, the way we tore through the council like a plague made of memory and pain. They hadn't intervened because they wanted to know the answer to one question. Would we become the new tyrants? Or would we do what they never could? We rebuilt nothing. Not at first. We buried our dead. We stood on empty streets and remembered who we used to be, and we debated. God, did we debate. Some wanted to burn the council remnants from orbit, hunt them down, erase every trace of their legacy across the stars. Some wanted to retreat, seal Earth again, let the relics sleep and pretend we were just humans, not the forgotten weapon of a cosmic Cold War. But most were like me, tired, scarred, still burning inside, but aware now, deeply aware of the truth. We were no longer just a species. We were a force, and forces have direction, or they destroy everything. The remembered began organizing the new network. No flags, no borders, no governments, just nodes. Some stayed on Earth, guarding the relic sites and repairing the damage we could. Others left through the sky gates, establishing contact with other species, the ones enslaved, discarded, or broken under council rule. We gave them a choice: rebuild with us, or keep hiding. Some joined, some fled, some tried to fight. They didn't last long. I stopped wearing armor. The relic had etched itself into my body so deep there was no point. It glowed through my skin now, faint but constant, like a heartbeat I couldn't silence. I no longer felt pain the same way. Hunger, sleep, even time didn't press on me like they used to. Kilo used to joke I wasn't human anymore. But he stopped laughing the day I stood in fire and didn't burn. One night, I climbed the ruins of what used to be the old NORAD site, a place that once monitored skies for threats from other nations. The irony wasn't lost on me. There, in the dark, the air shifted. And I wasn't alone. The Elder, the first one, the one who always hovered just beyond my dreams, descended in silence. It didn't speak aloud, but I heard its voice as clear as the wind through ash. You broke the cycle. You awakened what was buried. But you are still incomplete. I stepped forward. Then what's left? Its 6 eyes shifted in unison. Memory. Choice. And something you've never been given before. Legacy. That word hit me harder than any blast. We were always surviving, always running, fighting, killing. But legacy? That was for the ones who built, who stayed, who grew roots, not just scars. I wasn't sure we could do it, but I knew we had to try. The Council's core species had fled into the void, fragmented, leaderless. They would return, one day. Maybe under new banners, new names, but they would come. The galaxy is never still. So we didn't pretend we'd won forever. We just prepared. For every planet they'd poisoned, we sent aid. For every slave species they bred in labs, we opened the sky gates. And for every voice silenced by their empire, we told them this: Earth burned once. It will never burn alone again. The first child born after the war came into the world in a bunker beneath Iceland. Her mother still bandaged, her father half cybernetic. They named her Ashra, not after Ash, after Ashers, the resistance, the broken ones who stood up in the dirt and said no. I never returned to Manhattan. There's nothing left of it anyway. But sometimes when I sleep beneath the ruins of the old world, I still see my brother. Not the way he died, but the way he looked before all this. Laughing, alive, free. We didn't get our world back. We made a new one, brick by brick, bone by bone, with scars that glowed red and stories no history book would ever dare print. And if the stars come calling again, they'll find us waiting. Not as victims, not as prey, but as the weapon they buried and forgot. Because this is what they didn't understand. You can invade a planet, you can burn a city, you can silence a scream, but you can't kill a species that remembers. You can't erase the rage of the forgotten, and you'll never, ever survive. When Earth remembers what it really is,